We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
Someone who says I'm against abortion but says I'm in favor of the death penalty is not really pro-life. So someone who says that I'm against abortion but I'm in agreement with the inhuman treatment of immigrants from the United States, I don't know if that's pro-life. So they're very complex issues. I don't know if anyone has all the truth on them.
Someone who is for the death penalty is against life. I suppose in an elementary way, I can see where the Pope gets this idea. But you'd have to be in preschool to think that's how it works. Death penalty, therefore not life. That's not at all. Those things are clearly not equivalent. Hi, I'm Pastor Josh Barnes. This is Point of View Scriptura, where we look at issues from a biblical perspective, even things that are in the news, and we don't see the need to be the first people on the scene to comment on everything. We like to carefully think about this. This was a few weeks ago. You probably heard about it. Pope Leo, what is he, the 14th, I think? Pope Leo the 14th. Commented on the issue with Dick Durbin getting an award from some Catholic guy. I don't follow all the Catholic stuff, but but this is interesting because here's the deal about the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church, the main problem that Protestants have with the Catholic Church is that they tie themselves to this structure of authority that we think is really bad. Because if you look at all the Protestant churches who tie themselves to one central authority, like the Lutherans and the Anglicans, they all end up going south over time. And we think that's what happened with the Catholic Church too, because you are tying yourself to have to follow this guy even when he goes crazy. And we think that's happening. That has happened with popes in the past. It is happening today. Though we think Pope Leo, most of us Protestants think Pope Leo is generally better than other popes of recent, of late. It's still a problem. This shouldn't be happening, and it wouldn't be happening if Christ was your head. And this is why one of the arguments that we have against the Catholic Church. We think that the Catholic Church shouldn't tie itself to the authority of some guy in Rome. You should tie yourself to the authority of Christ and be willing and ready to criticize anyone who ignores the authority of Christ. And that seems pretty reasonable. And some Catholics are willing to criticize the Pope over this, and I applaud them for that. I just say, take the next step and become a Protestant. And we believe this is reasonable. But as a Protestant, I recognize that I don't have the reverence for the Pope that many Catholics do. And so this gives me a little bit more liberty, I think, to actually analyze what the Pope is saying and be careful about it. Now, what he says here is obviously incorrect. He's saying that to be for the death penalty, if you pro-death penalty, I don't know if that's a word. If you are for the death penalty, you are not pro-life. You can't be against abortion and for the death penalty and be consistent. And he says you also can't be for the inhumane treatment of immigrants. And I don't know that there's anyone who's for the inhumane treatment of immigrants. But you'd have to define what is inhumane treatment of immigrants. If immigrants have broken our law by illegally coming to our country and we're asking them to leave or we'll arrest them, that doesn't seem very inhumane, I think, to me. But it's clear that Pope Leo thinks that they are, that is inhumane, or else he wouldn't have said that, right? Because who's claiming that there's any inhumanity being done except for the left that says that that's happening under Trump. So let's talk about all three of these things: abortion, the death penalty, and immigration. And let's look at them from the biblical perspective, because that's what we do here on Point of View. And that's supposedly what the Pope's supposed to do. He's supposed to be leading the Roman Church in submission to Christ, submission to the Word of God, submission to the Bible. And I think it's pretty obvious that he's not, based on this statement. So let me play this statement for you so that you can hear the whole thing, and we'll see what you think, and I'll share my thoughts.
I think that it's very important to look at the overall work that a senator has done during, if I'm not mistaken, 40 years of service in the United States Senate. I understand the difficulty and the tensions, but I think, as I myself have spoken in the past, it's important to look at many issues that are related to what is the teaching of the church. Someone who says I'm against abortion but says I'm in favor of the death penalty is not really pro-life.
Someone who's in favor of abortion, who's against abortion but in favor of the death penalty, is not pro-life. Okay, we'll start with that accusation, because these are obviously not equivalent ideas. Someone who's pro-life believes that it is murder to kill an innocent child in the womb. So we are pro-life because we don't want you to kill an innocent person. Someone who's for the death penalty thinks that a guilty person, especially someone who has taken someone's life, should receive justice, which is being put to death. These are not equivalent things. And everybody, how can you not see that these are not equivalent, right? Wanting to protect innocent life is not the same as wanting to justice on the guilty. Is that a difficult concept to grasp? Pope Leo, I mean, right, you're not in kindergarten, you're not in elementary school. I would assume that this is a relatively easy concept to wrap your head around. A pro-life person isn't just like, we want every single person to live forever. Sure, we do. We want everybody to go to heaven. That'd be great. But we do want justice, right? We want justice on those who are evil. Pro-life isn't about we want everyone to not receive justice or something. No. Pro-life is about we want innocent people not to be murdered. That doesn't mean that we don't want guilty people not to receive justice. Okay, so then really what we need to ask is it justice for the guilty, especially murderers, to receive the death penalty? Is it justice is the death penalty justice in some cases? That's the question. That's really the question we need to ask. And since we know from Romans 13 that the government is charged by God to be the servant of God to execute God's wrath, then we know that if God says it is just to execute people in certain scenarios, then it is just for the government to do that. It is not just for me to necessarily do that. It is just for the government to do that in those scenarios, if God says that that's just. Now, we should also ask the question along with that, does God say that a baby in the womb is of equal value to an innocent person anywhere? So if an innocent person is walking down the street and it gets killed, we're against that, right? We're pro-life. But if an innocent baby is killed, is that equal to an innocent person walking down the street who gets murdered? If those two things are equal in value in the eyes of God, as far as God is concerned, then it is obviously unjust to be against that life, to not be pro-life. So then it would be just to be pro-life, and it would be just in the eyes of God to be pro-death penalty if we can prove those 2 points. What are the 2 points again? The 2 points are, number one, is it justice to enact the death penalty in certain scenarios? And number two, is a life in the womb, an innocent life in the womb, equal to an innocent life outside of the womb? Are those two things true? If we can prove those two things, then these are just obviously not the same thing, right? These are just justice in the eyes of God, and that's what we want, right? We're Christians, or at least the Pope claims to be a Christian. Okay, so let's go to the Bible, and we'll find the answer. Now, you probably know that I'm going to go to the book of Genesis, chapter 9, where we first see the death penalty declared to us. Okay, this is Noah. He just got off the ark. Remember that before the time of Noah, there was all kinds of violence on the earth. People were killing each other. And so now that God has erased all of those evil people from the earth with the flood, Noah gets off the ark, and what's the first thing that Jesus says? Well, it's God. Jesus is God. Here's the first thing that God says to them. And surely your blood, the blood of your lives, will I require at the hand of every beast. So if an animal kills a person, I expect that animal to be killed. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man. At the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. God says from the very beginning, all the way back in Genesis, if men are killing men, it is men who need to get together, verify that this crime has taken place, and shed the blood of the person who shed innocent blood. Whoever sheds innocent blood receives the death penalty. If you murder a person, you receive the death penalty, period. That's what God says all the way back in the book of Genesis. And now obviously this is applied nationally, because we'll see that in a moment in Romans 13, but this is even before there were any governments. Now God is, I think, here predicting that governments will arise after the time of Noah, and that they will be the ones enacting this, but he's saying this is a basic part of justice, of God's justice. Justice is that a murderer receives the death penalty. Now, when God established the nation of Israel, he gave even more things that needed to be punished with the death penalty. I mean, any kind of thing that you did that you couldn't restore, that you couldn't make right, you were put to death for it, right? If you stole something, you could give it back and give more back to make up for what you stole and for the time they were without it, and so on and so forth. But if you stole a woman's virginity, if you raped a woman, you would be put to death. There are things that you cannot restore. You can't make it right. So justice is you're put to death. So if the death penalty is wrong, why did God use it and command the people of Israel to use it? And why did he command Noah to do it before even Israel existed? You say, well, it's just part of the law. It's the Old Testament. Well, yeah, but it was before the law was given, all the way back in Genesis chapter 9. Now you say, well, maybe it's just Old Testament stuff. We just ignore all this Old Testament stuff. Well, I think that's silly. But look at Romans chapter 13. We talked about this in our last episode. This is Romans 13, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. Here, Paul is laying out the idea that government is only authorized to do what God allows them to do. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation, for rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Well, what if they are a terror to good works instead of evil? Well, that's the exception. In that case, you don't follow them. We see that in the book of Acts, where the disciples say, no, we ought to obey God rather than man. But this is the default. This is the rule. And there are exceptions to the rule where rulers aren't doing this. But this is what rulers are supposed to be. This is the ideal government, that rulers are a terror to good works, not to evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. We want a government that we can obey. And this is the government that we can obey, the one that is the minister or servant of God. Verse 4, for he is the minister or servant of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the, what is he bearing? The sword. Do you see what's happening here? God is saying that governments are designed to execute his wrath, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Governments are tasked by God. God tasks them with this solemn goal: to enact God's wrath on evildoers with, what's that word? The sword. He bears not the sword for nothing. Now, what is Paul writing about here? Okay, you didn't chastise somebody with a sword. You didn't beat somebody with a sword. You didn't put someone in prison with a sword. This is not about some sort of restorative punishment. This is justice. This is the death penalty, the sword. He bears the sword. That would be a thing that you kill someone with. That's what you use it for, the sword. He bears it not in vain, because he's executing God's wrath. This is Paul talking about governments in the New Testament times. And he's saying, this is what governments are supposed to do: execute God's justice with the sword, even to the death penalty. So, is the death penalty God's justice? Well, yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. Okay, second question: is abortion the actual killing of an innocent life that is just of just as much value as any other life? I mean, we all would agree that some innocent person walking down the street who's murdered, that's wrong and that's evil. And we're against that. We want that to be illegal, to murder that innocent person walking down the street. Now, in God's opinion, is the baby in the womb of equal value to an innocent person outside of the womb? Is the baby, who's obviously innocent, in the womb of the same value as the person outside of the womb? If that's the case, then it is God's justice to defend the baby, the innocent baby, and it's God's justice to put to death the murderer. We've already established that it's God's justice to put to death murderers. That's God's justice, and that's what the government's supposed to be doing. So what is God's justice about babies? Well, let's look. If you go to Exodus 21, let me pull it up here. Exodus 21. If you're watching on the video podcast, if you're listening on audio podcast, sorry, you'll have to look it up yourself. You can't see it on your screen. Okay, Exodus 21. And let's see what verse we're going for. Exodus 21, verse 22 is where this section starts. Here's a law that's very interesting. It says this: if men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit, that's a word that speaks about the child. She is a woman with child, and her fruit or her child departs from her. So she prematurely gives birth. That's what that phrase in Hebrew means, that she gives birth before she's ready. The child is born prematurely. And yet no mischief follow. Okay, so the woman with child, her child leaves her womb, but no mischief follows, meaning the child is fine. He shall be surely punished according as the woman's husband will lay upon him. So he gets whatever beating or whatever restitution he has to pay based on what the husband wants. And the husband's going to be very angry about this. So he doesn't get put to death because the child's fine. No mischief follows. But he's still surely punished for hurting this woman and causing this premature birth. He will be surely punished according as the woman's husband will lay on him, and he shall pay the judges the determined amount. The determined. Right? Yeah. As the judges, I'm reading it wrong. That's why I'm saying, well, this doesn't make any sense. Okay, but he shall pay as the judges determine, right? Whatever the judges determine, that's what he has to pay. The husband will say, here's what he gets. The judges will make sure the husbands aren't going beyond what is reasonable. And there we go. Verse 23. But if any mischief follow, meaning if there is something wrong with the child when it comes out, okay, the child is prematurely born. If no mischief follows, no big deal. He's punished. That's the end of that. But if mischief follows, then thou shalt give life for life. If the baby dies, the man dies. Eye for eye. If the baby's missing an eye, you take the man's eye out who hit the woman. Tooth for tooth. If the baby's missing a tooth, you take the man's tooth out. Hand for hand. If the baby's missing a hand, you chop off the man's hand. Foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Do you see what's happening here? The baby's life, the baby's eye, the baby's tooth, the baby's hand, the baby's foot, the baby in the womb, every part of that baby is of equal value to the man who hit the woman. And since he is an evil person who did a wrong thing, and the baby is the innocent person, then whatever happens to the baby has to happen to him. That's justice. So it's God's justice to be against the harming of innocent individuals, including babies in the womb, because they are of equal value to people outside the womb, according to this passage, in the eyes of God. So it is justice, and it is justice to put to death murderers. I mean, there's not a lot of, that's just what it is. So Pope Leo, we're not, if it helps you to call it, instead of calling it pro-life, because that confuses you. The word life and the word death seem like opposites, don't they? And so when you say death penalty and pro-life, they seem opposites. But since that's so confusing to you, Pope, I will, I'll make it simple. Here's what we'll do. We'll just call it justice. That's what we're for. And we are for justice for innocent babies in the womb. That's pro-life. And we are for justice for evil murderers outside of the womb. Well, because there's no evil murderers in the womb. We're for justice for evil murderers. And that is pro-death penalty. Okay? So there we go. Make it simple for you. All right, let's get to his last comment, which is about immigration. And we'll just do the trifecta today. We'll cover the death penalty, abortion, and immigration all in one episode. And this is going to be a fun episode.
So someone who says that I'm against abortion, but I'm in agreement with the inhuman treatment of immigrants who are in the United States, I don't know if that's pro-life. So they're very complex issues.
Okay, if you're for abortion, but you agree with the inhuman treatment of immigrants, you're not pro-life. Now, who is he talking about? He's got to be talking about President Trump and his desire to arrest people who have illegally immigrated to the country, especially those who won't leave after they're told to leave. They're actively disobeying the law of our country and refusing to stop disobeying it because they're here illegally and they can leave, and they're being told to leave, and they will not obey. They're continuing to disobey the law of the country. So they are actively in disobedience to our laws, and somehow arresting them and putting them in prison or sending them back to where they came from is inhumane. That's obviously what he's talking about. I mean, let's just be honest, because who else would he be talking about? And somehow this is inhumane, which is just ridiculous. It's not, of course, not inhumane. But beyond that, what does God say about what is justice for immigrants? That's a good question. All right, well, let's go back to the Bible, because again, the Bible is our authority. And many times throughout the Bible, we actually find this. I'm going to go to Exodus 12 to start with, since we're already in Exodus. And this is actually mentioned a couple times to the people of Israel. When God gives them laws, he tells them how these laws are going to be enacted. Exodus 12, verse 49, God says this. Let me find it. Verse 49. One law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. One law, meaning if somebody from another nation comes and is with you for a while he's with you, he has to obey the law. And if he disobeys the law, he gets the same penalty that anyone who's part of the country, who's part of Israel, has to pay. You all have to obey the same law. Okay, this is repeated multiple times. I'll give you another, Leviticus 24, and I believe it's verse 22. Ye shall have one manner of law as well for the stranger as for one of your own country, for I am the Lord your God. So you have one law. If they obey the law, they're welcome to stay. If they disobey the law, they are going to get the same penalty that anyone else gets when they disobey the law. So immigrants in the United States who are here obeying the law, meaning they immigrated here legally and they are still here legally and they are obeying our law, they don't need to be treated poorly. I mean, they're obeying the law. That's wonderful that they're here. But immigrants that came here, if you want to call them immigrants, illegal immigrants who came here illegally, crossed our border illegally, are staying here illegally, are continuing to break our law by being here, well, they should be arrested, because that's what happens when I break our law. I'll be arrested. So should it be to them. Do you see then that what we're not talking about here is, oh, my feelings are hurt because immigrants, and you try to come up with this liberal talking point. Rather, we're just saying, what is justice? What is God's justice in these scenarios? The Pope should know this. I mean, he's older than I am. He's been elected as the head of the largest Christian denomination, although I hesitate to call it Christian, but I do disagree substantially with the Catholic Church. But okay, here we go. Here's the Pope. Shouldn't he know this? Shouldn't he know the Bible well enough to know that God's justice is what's at stake here when we're talking about the death penalty, when we're talking about abortion, and when we're talking about immigration? God has things to say about these subjects, and he tells us what is just. It is just for immigrants to be required to follow the law and to come to a nation legally. It is just to put murderers to death. It is just to defend the life of innocent people in the womb. All of this isn't hard to get. But let me go back to the Pope's comments here, because here he's going to say nobody knows what the truth is about all the these are hard subjects. Nobody knows how to answer these things. Wait a minute. That's an interesting statement. Let me let him make it here.
Don't know if anyone has all the truth on them.
I don't know if anyone has all the truth on them. Hello? You are the Pope. The Catholic teaching about the Pope is that the Pope has all the truth about these things. The Pope is the vicar of Christ on earth. He can speak on behalf of Christ. Where there's confusion about what is true, the Pope can step in and say, here's the true thing, and clarify it. He says, I don't know if anyone has all the truth on these things. Hello? The Bible tells us what is God's justice, and the Bible tells us that God expects governments to enact his justice. So what do you mean you don't know if anyone has the truth on these things? I'm just a little old pastor in a little tiny church in New Hampshire, and I can read the Bible and see that God has given us the truth on these things. How can he say that I don't know if anyone has the truth on it? Of all people, the claim of the Roman Catholic Church is that he should have it. He should have that truth. He should at least know it or know where it's found. I can find it very easily in the Bible. So what's going on here, Pope? Well, the answer is pretty simple. The answer is that we don't place our faith in men. And when we do, our faith is always disappointed, because Pope Leo is a man, and he's faulty, and he makes errors. And he is clearly wrong in this regard. This is why, as Protestants, as Christians, just as Christians in general, our faith is in Christ and in the infallible word of the Scriptures. That is why we say we are sola scriptura. We don't place our faith in men. We don't rely upon men to give us the answers, though we are helped and taught by men, and we can receive encouragement and inspiration, and we can follow the pattern and the godly lives of good men. That's what pastors are supposed to be. That's what many great men of the faith can be for us. But our hope is not in men, and our doctrine does not hang on the word of every word of some man. I certainly hope those within my sphere of influence don't find that they never disagree with me. I am encouraged as I listen to other people, as I hear great voices on politics and faith and religion, and listen to podcasts and all that stuff. I'm encouraged when I find that I disagree with them, because it means that I'm not just blind following everything they say and taking everything they say as gospel. I hope that's the way people listen to me as well. I hope they hear me, they say, this is right, this makes sense, this is true, and then they say, well, you know what, I think I disagree with them on that. And that's good because guess what? I disagree with myself and things that I believed 10 years ago. So you should disagree with me, or else I'll disagree with you for not disagreeing with me 10 years from now. The point is that we don't place our faith in men. Men can help us think through concepts and arguments and ideas, but we place our faith in God and His infallible word. And God has something to say about governments and what is just, especially concerning immigration, the death penalty, and abortion, as we've seen today. That's all I have to say for today. Thanks for joining us on the show. This is Point of View Scriptura, and we will see you next time.
We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.